There's a quote by John Dewey, who's an education philosopher: "What the best and wisest parent wants for his child, that must we want for all children." And that's guided my work as a teacher, as a principal, as a mentor, as a volunteer at the detention center, as a board member at the Covering House. We cannot just look and think those kids. They are our kids. I began my journey with the detention center the same year I started with Covering House. And both of those organizations, we have kids there. They've either been through horrific circumstances or they've perhaps done some horrific things, but they're still kids. You just have to be real. And kids quickly figure out whether or not you really care. Most of the kids at the detention center are young black males. Well, you look at me and I'm an old white lady, which, by the way, I wrote a book called The OWL, The Old White Lady. The kids love to call me that. When they first see me, they're looking like, okay, lady, what do you know? And they're right, I have not lived their lives, but I get it. The girls at Covering House, there's so much more than a trafficked or exploited victim.
One of the things that we see at the Covering House a lot of times with our girls is they don't have people who show up day after day, people who they trust. Their trust has been severed because of the trauma they've experienced. And so consistency is so important. And so for Pam, she understands that. And so showing up, she shows up for the birthday parties, she shows up for the graduations, she shows up just because. Even the most guarded kids drop those guards, drops that wall, and opens up and allows her to enter into their lives. It's really special.
Another former student was convicted of killing a police officer and was sentenced to death. And I helped him write 3 books and get them published. And then his last book, he wrote, Journey to the Gurney, and he began writing that the day he found out his actual execution date. I look back on that young man, what he did was horrendous, horrible, and he would be the first to say that. But he was also one of the best dads I think I've ever met. So I'm still in touch with his daughter and his grandchild.
Her impact isn't fleeting. It's not in and out. It is generational. There are very few people who would go that extra mile. So they know, so he knows, so his daughter knows that there's always going to be somebody that will have their back.
One of my visits to the detention center was shortly after Halloween. And then this one young man got ready to give him the candy. And I said, do you have a joke? And he goes, well, no, but I got a poem. And I said, what's that? And he goes, roses are red, violets are blue. I'm so glad it's Sunday and I get to see you. Oh, and that's a glimmer. That's the glimmer of hope that I think keeps us all going. These really are kids, and they're our kids, and we can't give up on them.